Talking Western Conference Finals today, Thunder, Timberwolves. Let me know in the comments who you like to advance to the NBA Finals. I'll drop that link down below for our Eastern Conference Finals preview as well. Ninja here with former NBA big man John Henson, and from Oddshark, it is Chris Walder. Speaking of Chris Walder, Steve, why don't you roll that clip from our guy, Chris, from way back earlier this NBA season? Roll it. Chris, I'll start with you. Can anyone stop the Boston Celtics?
Again, I'm going to regret it. I got the New York Knicks coming out of the Eastern Conference this season. I have them getting to the NBA Finals. I'm going down with that ship. New York gets out of the East.
Chris, who do you got out of the West?
It's going to be a rematch of the WNBA Finals because it's going to be New York versus Minnesota competing for the NBA championship this year.
Chris, we're almost there, buddy.
I mean, what a take. I mean, it took, unfortunately, Achilles tear, but it's life. We can't predict those things.
Look, don't be selling the New York Knicks short here. They won the first two games at TD Garden. They were winning that game at Madison Square Garden before Tatum got hurt. I still think they would have ended up winning that series. But yeah, I wish I could pick some lottery numbers while I'm at it. If I'm projecting the NBA Finals, I mean, we're very close. We're this close. And I think the storylines would be awesome. But yeah, shout out to me, pat on the back, Chris Walder, for calling it like I see it. And hopefully it'll manifest. But yeah, let's just forget you showed that before I make my pick for this series we're about to talk about.
Noted. Let's take a look at the series prices here for this one. Also, I find it completely hilarious that Michael Malone, who the Nuggets fired with 3 games to go in the regular season, is joining ESPN to cover this series. But anyway, moving on. Here you see the series prices. We got OKC minus 375, of course, 68 win team. Timberwolves coming back at 3-1 over 5.5 games, plus 114 under minus 140. OKC just 4-7 against the spread in the playoffs so far. Minnesota, though, unbelievable. 8-2 against the spread in their 10 playoff games. Really a fantastic playoff run for the Wolves here and Wolves backers. The two teams, of course, split the season series, 2 games apiece. And John Henson, let me start with this. Anthony Edwards, in his young, brief career, has already eliminated KD, Jokic, LeBron, Luka, and now Steph Curry in his brief postseason career. What is, in your opinion, the ceiling for a guy like Ant Edwards? He's averaging, 26, 8, and 6 in this playoff run. Could he become the quote-unquote best player in the game?
Well, aging LeBron, aging KD, aging Steph, and Luka is with LeBron. I get the narrative, but I mean, let's take this back. If these guys were 26, 27, it'd be a different story. But his trajectory, man, to be 23 years old and going through the kind of gauntlet of gladiators, Hall of Famers, it's amazing to see for someone at that age. And you just wonder how long can he keep this up? I mean, we got a potential 7 to 10 more years of Ant. So I think this is just the beginning. He's a leader of that team. He wins a championship, right? We always make fun of that he didn't want to be the face. I mean, he's going to have no choice, right? So I love this for the game. I love this for the league. Having a guy, an American that can, push the game forward, because right now the foreign guys, they've got it. You got a Canadian MVP. Jokic is obviously not from them, and you can go down the list. So, I think for an American basketball player, it's good for the sport in the U.S. And I'm excited to see where this goes. As far as his career, man. I mean, he's doing it all.
And Shea's cousin in this series as well, Nikhil Walker-Alexander. So lots of Canadian content. But Chris, we were talking about this a little bit off cam before we recorded this, but we saw the Thunder execute an exceptional defensive game plan in Game 7 at the very least, where they disrupted any sort of Nuggets offense, especially when Jokic had the ball in the high post, forcing turnovers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what will the difference be for that Thunder defense and any Dagnall game planning against Ant Edwards and this Minnesota Timberwolves team?
Well, obviously, the primary difference in this series is that Minnesota's best player isn't their starting center. Like, we're not going to be confusing Rudy Gobert for Nikola Jokic anytime soon. So you always have to account for the best player on the opposing team. And just kind of like what you guys were talking about, it's obviously Anthony Edwards in this series. But the thing that worries me is that Edwards shot below 38% from the field in 3 of the 4 games against Oklahoma City during the regular season. So when you have like a defense by committee, you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you got Lou Dort, you got Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, a number of elite perimeter defenders that you can throw at somebody like Edwards, just constant switches, fresh bodies galore for the Thunder's head coach. Like, you have a ton of options to keep that shooting efficiency of his down. So if he's going to be shooting, below 40% from the field again, I'm not saying that's what he's going to do, but Oklahoma City can make life miserable for him. And if you take Edwards out of the equation, Minnesota is going to struggle a lot to score a lot of points. So that needs to be their primary game plan. Again, it's going to be kind of like the polar opposite of what we saw against the Nuggets, because again, you're not going to be confusing Rudy Gobert for a Nikola Jokic-esque box score at the end of the day. He's not going to be putting up even what he did against the Lakers in that final game where he was dropping like 28 points and 25 rebounds, whatever that line was, that's not going to duplicate itself again. But another kind of factoid that I found just from the defensive schemes from the Thunder is that just like the regular season, the Thunder are the only team in the playoffs right now averaging double-digit steals. So they're replicating that success on the defensive end in the postseason thus far. Minnesota is averaging the most turnovers per game of the 4 remaining teams competing in the conference finals, and only the Golden State Warriors and Memphis Grizzlies forced Edwards to turn the rock over more this past season than Oklahoma City did. So I kind of expect a similar situation to manifest here in the Western Conference Finals. Edwards can get rather sloppy with the ball, and the Thunder will make him pay for that.
I want to talk to you.
I think it's a bad matchup. I personally, I was looking at this today on paper. Now on paper, they're a lot closer than the books are saying. But matchup wise, OKC is number 1 points in the paint. Anthony Edwards is number 4 in points in the paint per game. That's probably why he struggles against OKC. Their best lineup is with Chet, right? So if they can get away with one big, they're 100 percentile offensively in the playoffs with him at a plus 34.8 differential, scoring 137 points per possession, limit opponents 100. The numbers are astronomical if they could get away with playing Chet. So we'll talk about it later with our X Factor, but they better pray one guy is ready to go. That's all I'm gonna say.
And I do want to talk to you guys about what each of you think that this series X Factor is going to be, and I'll get into that momentarily, but I do want to single out one player here, and that's Julius Randle. He is having a sensational playoff run, it has to be said. He's averaging 24, 6, and 6. So, John Henson, do you think bettors should look to this guy, should look to Julius Randle for game props in this series? Or do the Thunder pose a bigger challenge than what we saw from the Lakers and what we saw from the Warriors? Plus 104 at FanDuel in game 1 for over 20.5 points, by the way.
We call this a trap right here. They're trying to lure you in with the nice, line, 20.5 points. You average 25, 7, and 6. If you look at the numbers and everything like that, why wouldn't he be higher, right? Why is he still at 19.5, on some books 20.5? So I think he's a good fade candidate. I think a lot of these Minnesota guys are good fade candidates, just kind of pick your poison per se, until the market adjusts. I don't think they're going to get off like they got off against in the previous series. So the only guy I would leave alone is Naz Reid. But for the most part, think about it. If Julius Randle had a okay series, what would his line be? 17, 16? So I think he's a little value in fading him, even fading Ant for a little, it's a scary proposition, especially game 1. You're just going to see the matchup and what they're going to do. But yeah, Julius has played as well as he could have. He's in the Western Conference Finals. That trade kind of looks kind of okay for both sides. And he's playing the best basketball of his career. He's been out of the playoffs the last 2 times. So I love how he looks at the moment. And I think he could pose a matchup problem for the Timberwolves, but he also is a guy that likes to score his points in the paint. So, for me to just say he's going to just drop 20 plus points on the best defense in the NBA, best paint defense in the NBA. Somebody is not going to make it. That's what we say in Carolina. Somebody is not going to make it. So pick your poison, do your dive, research. But Julius Randle obviously is playing well, but this might be a tougher series for him, being as this is a team that's stout down low.
Lots of interesting angles in this series, of course, whether it's with the clipboard, whether it's the players on the hardwood, whatever. But Chris, let's talk about Series X Factor. What are you earmarking here as the X Factor for Wolves Thunder?
Well, my friend John Henson and I may have similar projections for who the X Factor will be in this series. He's a favorite of the program. He's a favorite of mine. He's a favorite of yours. It's Naz Reid of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think he's going to be the huge X Factor for how far the Timberwolves can go in this series. If you check out my player props for Game 1, which is going on Tuesday night, I actually took the over at 10.5 points at plus money, which is incredible value. I got that over at BetMGM. Even though the number is like that because he scored in the single digits in the last 3 games in the second round against the Golden State Warriors. And I think that's kind of selling him a little bit short, because if you look at what he contributed during the regular season against the Oklahoma City Thunder, he scored more points than any other Timberwolves player in those 4 games, 2 more than Anthony Edwards. Even though he played 2 more minutes than Edwards overall, that's still an impressive stat for someone like Reid, a former 6th man of the year. Now, we also have to take into account as well that Julius Randle was only active for 1 of those games, just like Rudy Gobert. So that's something to keep note of. We haven't really seen these 2 teams at full strength against each other so far, which makes this matchup so compelling on paper. Now, Reid did start twice during the regular season. In 2 of those games, he put up some incredible numbers. And Chet Holmgren was also inactive for 2 of those games. He was missing time, still recovering from that hip injury. But just the fact that Reid was able to kind of score at will when Minnesota was limited in terms of its options against the number 1 defense in basketball in Oklahoma City, I think that's something to keep in mind. His role is going to be kind of tapered back. You're going to see Randle still play a heavy dose of minutes. Obviously, Gobert is going to thrive more in this matchup than some of the other matchups, just because the Thunder's front court is very big with Holmgren, with Isaiah Hartenstein. But if Reid can give you 15, 16, 17 points per game, especially with Dante DiVincenzo being rather inefficient for the second unit, I think that's going to be a huge selling point to convince people to, hey, bet on Minnesota at plus money on the money line in this series, because they're going to have a ton of options, especially when Reid is thriving scoring the rock.
And John, I'm certain you agree.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad Chris said it all for me. If Naz Reid plays well and plays a lot of minutes, Minnesota has a chance. Their best lineup actually is Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, McDaniels, Reid, and Gobert. So that's something to kind of think about as well. There's not really much film, I guess, to watch because of the mixed match lineups they had with injuries. But you, as a coach in the NBA, you probably know your best lineup for the season. And so you try to play that as much as you can. And the Thunder's best lineup actually this year was SGA, Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, and Chet. So it's going to be a little chess match between these 2 teams as far as lineup-wise and what you think may happen. But yeah, Naz Reid is the X factor. He has to play well. He plays well against OKC historic. I think for his career, he's averaging 20 points per game against OKC. I don't know if they didn't draft him. Maybe he got snubbed, but there's something there. So he's the X factor for sure for the Timberwolves, because I think Chet will struggle to guard him with his physicality. And then Hartenstein's going to struggle to guard him perimeter-wise, getting around, dribbling, that type of thing, driving. So he's the guy for them. If he can be a really high-level player for them, 6th guy that can average 15-plus points, I think Minnesota has a chance. If not, and they can kind of OKC can put their death lineup in, and Naz Reid is ineffective, and they can pack that paint, it's going to be a little slow for Minnesota, especially if they're not hitting threes, which we don't know. That's a great variable. They're a good 3-point shooting team, but OKC is also the best team at guarding the 3 line. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. We talked about it before. It's exciting because when you look at it from a match perspective, it's like OKC should roll. They should roll from on paper, but Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, they're playing better, especially Julius. That could kind of change the dynamic as well.
Let's get into it then. Series predictions and best bets. Chris, I'll start with you. What are you looking at here?
Well, my mind says to pick the Oklahoma City Thunder just because they are the better team on paper. They had the best record in basketball, had a 16-game lead over the rest of the Western Conference. But in terms of just like actually making a bet, I'm probably, and I haven't done it yet, I'm probably going to do it right before game 1 tonight. I'm going to take the Minnesota Timberwolves to take this series in 7 games. I do think it is going the distance. Right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, you can get the Timberwolves in 7 games at plus 920, I believe, which you can see on the graphic here. Thank you for that, Ninja. I just think in terms of just what Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves have already accomplished, we've talked about this before, like the meme that's going around on social media, the Infinity Gauntlet that Edwards is donning like Thanos from the Marvel Universe. He's already added like LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Stephen Curry to a lesser extent. We'll cut him some slack because he was hurt in the second round. But even like Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green to an extent. Like the guy thrives on being a legend killer. He's taking out the elite of the game and putting his name on a new pedestal as one of the best in basketball, which we already knew. But at the same time, he's going up against a Thunder team that has already validated itself as the best team in basketball. Maybe that will kind of make Edwards take it to a whole other level. We were talking earlier about his inefficiency during the regular season. But right now, there's just a lot to like about the Thunder's defense. They have so many options to throw at him. They have home court advantage in this series. And if it does go to a game 7, that's obviously going to play into the end result. I know Minnesota did eliminate the Denver Nuggets in 7 games last year, but it did take a miraculous comeback in the second half for that to happen. So who knows if that, how that would have ultimately unfolded. So right now, I don't think you can really go at fault either way, maybe sprinkling a little bit on both. But personally, just as a basketball purist, I would be very surprised if this series did not go 7 games.
And John Henson, over to you. Series prediction and best bet.
Yeah. I'm kind of on, the Timberwolves train in the sense of value, because I was looking and there's really no value in OKC right now. It's all in Minnesota. But when you look at it, Minnesota's top 10 in offense. OKC's top 10 in offense. Minnesota's top 10 in three-point percentage allowed. So is OKC. Minnesota's a top 10 defense. So is OKC. They both have 2 top 5 points in the paint scores per game in SGM and Ant. So I like that game 7 pick. Actually, that's pretty kind of for plus 900. It could go that way. I'm going to take OKC for the series, but I tried to find a little value. And on FanDuel, I found after the first 3 games, bet OKC 2-1 at plus 104. That's kind of the best I could get as far as a number that I'm willing to bet on. So I think after 3 games, OKC will be up 2-1. It's plus 104, so even money. So that's something I'm willing to kind of rock with. I think this is going to be a closer series, and I think if OKC does win 2 at home, Minnesota gets 1, or vice versa. If Minnesota steals 1, OKC gets 1 coming back. So that'll be my best bet, at least for the series, because right now the value is really not there for OKC, who I think will win the series.
It's shaping up to be a good one. There you go. Picks for Timberwolves and Thunder in the Western Conference Final. I'll drop the link for the Eastern Conference Final preview in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you on the NBA Finals preview.